Greetings. We've got an issue in a few of our buildings where we've got UPS systems like this with their own air conditioning, and the trouble is, if there's a power glitch, a brief power glitch, it can cause these air conditioning units to shut down, and the unit won't come back on until you actually turn it off and back on again with the remote. So we need some means of getting these things to automatically kick in without user interaction. Otherwise, the first thing we find out is when we get emails from the UPSs to complain that they're getting too hot. So let's see what I can come up with. Now, it would be nice to be able to modify the existing remote control, but unfortunately what they do is when you press the button, it sends an on command with a whole chain of instructions for setting up the temperature and the fan and whatnot. And when you press the same button again, it turns off. So it sends two different streams of commands to the air conditioning unit. So obviously you can't set a timer on this because it's going to be turning on and off all the time. What we can do is take that on command and capture it with a learning remote like this one. I picked on this one because you can pick these up second-hand cheaply enough. This is a Sony RMAV2000T. The RMAV2000 works as well. I'm not sure the difference between the two. I don't think there's very much difference between the two. It's I think a lot of it is just cosmetic. But what we can do with this is we can program the various buttons. You can see with this it's a touch remote where you can choose the different VCR or TV, whatever, with these different commands. But we also have these buttons here, which are system control buttons, which are separate to all these. So on top of this, you can control what you can send a completely separate command with one of these buttons. Oh, I've got it kicking off going through the houses there now. Whoops. This is, I think, is preset to when you press System Control 3, it just turns everything on. So we can program one of these buttons, and what I'd like to do is basically have it so that every once a minute or thereabouts that button gets pressed and turns the air conditioning on. If the air conditioning is already on, it stays on. It's just getting another on command. But if for some reason such as a power glitch, the air conditioning has dropped out, within a minute it gets the command and turns it back on again. These are a little bit fiddly to program, so what you definitely need is the manual to go with it. I've got post-it on the right page here, and in fact it does mention using it for things like air conditioners. So you've got to press some, how do you do this? You've got to program one of these system buttons. You've got to, while pressing Commander off, you've got to press the program and the volume up button. So let's do that. And it wants to learn. Right, okay. Now we press the system control button we want to program, which is that one. Now it's trying to learn, so let's turn that off. And we'll send the command again. There. That's taking that command now. So if I turn that back off, and now if I press System Control 1, when I'm pressing it, it is now, you might just be able to see on there, it's actually sending a command. What we can also do is delete all these other buttons we don't want. So if I press down Commander off and press the TV button to get everything flashing. Now apparently if I hold the reset button, there we can see it changed the flash rate of that button. That's flashing them all slowly now. So if I now do Commander off and then press TV, there are no buttons showing on TV, and I can repeat that for the rest of these to delete them all. But we still have system control 1, which does the air conditioning on. So next thing, I want to control that and get it so about once a minute that button is automatically pressed. And for that I will need a few other things. First of all, I need a power supply because this is going to be running all the time. I've just scavenged one, anything about 5 or 6 volts. This is an old mobile phone charger, which is 5.9 volts at 400 milliamps. I've also used a Nokia charger in the past, which was 5.3 volts at 500 milliamps, and that worked fine. So I'll need that, and also I need a timer circuit, and these are all the components I need for that. There's a 555 timer. This one's an SA555 because I just picked it out of the parts bin. There's a small 5 volt relay and 2 resistors. One is 3.3k, the other is 680k. There's a 10 nanofarad capacitor and a couple of diodes as well. I've got 5 diodes here. If you don't want to run the backlight, as you'll see from the schematic shortly, you can reduce that down to just a single diode. Here's the schematic, and it's a basic 555 timer circuit. There's nothing fancy about that, but you can see it's going to make some special connections inside the remote. So let's pop the cover off the remote, get the batteries out. You'll notice that the load's got 6 cells. These 4 are for running the remote control. These 2 are just for the backlight. If you don't need the backlight, you don't need batteries in there. So let's get the cover off. And this will just pry open like that. The back clips over the front. There may be other similar controls that you can use as an alternative to this. I've used these because I needed something with a physical button and something which can actually learn a command, not something with a programmed memory bank of loads of commands. I needed something which would actually take a command in, and this fits the bill for that. What you can see here is there are a lot of test points which connect down to the buttons on the front panel, amongst other things. And what we should find is that 2 of these correspond to pressing the system control button. So I'm going to save you all the too much poking and prodding, hopefully, because this is one I prepared earlier. Now, this is an RMAV 2000, which we've been using at work for years, so I know this works. You can see the design is different between the 2000 and the 2000T, so there's definitely something not the same. And on this it was 43 and 35 were the 2 test points for system control 1. Those test points are in different locations on here. I will try 43 and 35 again because they're roughly in the same location, even though there's a chip in the way now. I think that's the difference with this. Yes, there's an additional sharp chip, an LH5359PA on there, which doesn't exist on the 2000. No idea what it does. The 2000 didn't need it. So anyway, let's try 43 and 35 and see what happens when I push the system control button. Jackpot. It's exactly the same as on the RMAV 2000. So those 2 points, if you short those together, it's going to be the same as pushing this button. That's where the relay comes in. Because it's going to be a multiplex key array, we can't just ground one or the other. It's going to that's going to really mess things up. So what we want to do is just short those together, so when it scans its keyboard, it just thinks that, oh, someone's pushed the button. Well, they won't have pushed the button, the relay will have closed. Now there's not a lot of room in here. You can see there's going to be a bit of clearance below the battery compartment and there, but not much. but you can actually bodge this. As you can see, I've bodged it on the previous one without having a circuit board at all. It's done just basically with everything wrapped in tape and around the 555 timer. And that's how I'm gonna do this now. I'm gonna start by folding the legs out on the 555. Oh dear, one of the ends has come off. There we go. It's lost a leg and had part of its body surgically removed, but much as the Department for Work and Pensions would classify it, it's still fit for work. So what I'm going to do now is going to start building the components straight onto the chip. Just like that. There we go, and on the back there's very little, it's just a pair of jumper wires going across on the back. So this can just be taped up now, but I won't do that just yet. I need to prepare the relay as well. That's the relay done with the diode straight across the back. I've just got one more wire to add onto this now, which is the orange wire from the timer circuit. And this bodge wire extravaganza is ready to fit to the controller. Well, tape up and fit to the controller. Right, testing it with batteries for now. I've gone through here and deleted all the other buttons, so you can see none of the other touchscreen stuff works except for System Control 3, which attempts to turn on. Apparently that'll turn on anything that's Sony. It just goes through the whole lot. It would knock your entire Sony entertainment system on. So once that's finished, just let it settle. Right, and what it should do is once a minute it should simulate pressing that. You'll hear a little click of a relay to go along with that when it does it. Like that. And that's working nicely. So the next thing we need to do is wire the power supply to this, because it's going to be running constantly and we don't want the batteries running flat. So we don't need batteries at all. So batteries back out, cover off. And I'm going to take that old Motorola power supply again. I've cut the plug off already and determined which wire is positive and which wire is negative. In this case, the one with the stripe is positive. And I'm going to feed that in through the back cover like that, because it's actually going to exit through the battery compartment. And this now needs to solder on to these two connections here. Just like that. And one last thing, remember I mentioned the other diodes? These are for if you want to run the backlight supply, and they need to go from that positive connection down to that positive connection, the EL plus connection there. So I'm going to put a strip of tape around those, and before wrapping them up, remember which way round you got it, because we've actually got the diodes pointing this way to that scabby end. And those diodes will just act as a voltage dropper to give us about 3 volts for the backlight supply. So let's try it again. One last look at the components, the way they're all laid out. Stamps are neater than the first one I did. They need to go around that and up that end where there's slightly more room because of the tapering of the case. So that'll go through. And the cable in fact went up and around and snaked and back around the front there to pop through just down below the spring, and that's actually clipped together properly. So let's power it up. See if we have power. Yes we do. Do we have backlight? Yes we do. It's just going to be a matter now of cutting a slot in the battery case like that to take the power lead. Tie a knot in the cable as well to avoid it getting tugged. That will just go through there, like that. You may be wondering why I've used an off-the-shelf remote control for doing this instead of using something like an Arduino. Well, a couple of reasons. One, I haven't got any Arduinos spare. I've only bought one the other day to do an infrared transceiver for my Fluke multimeters. Secondly, I bought this a while back. It's just I never got around to building it as an aircon remote controller until recently. Now we've actually got a use for it now. And thirdly, because it's quite an old design, I actually made one of these a couple of years ago, and that's been running constantly ever since, keeping one of our other aircons constantly switched on in a different building. So it made sense to just replicate that, and besides, these are cheap enough. I may try and build one of these with an Arduino down the line. I'll have to buy some Arduinos and look into it. If I do, then I'll, well, that was one of them. Well, that was the other one. I'll do a fresh video because it should be cheaper to do, certainly with the clone Arduinos, which you can pick up like sort of £2 or £3. So I might be able to do it for much less than this, even though these are quite cheap second hand. Anyway, we know this works on the desk. Does it work with the aircon? Let's find out. That's there waiting. Aircon is running. Let's turn it off. And wait and see what happens. As if by magic, the aircon is on once more, and it'll keep on automatically doing that. If you can just push the button again, you can see the aircon is already on, so it just stays on. Hope someone finds this useful. Thanks for watching. And let's not forget to do this one as well. Happy days.